I thought maybe you'd had enough of my pretty face, and I thought I'd record a video without necessarily putting my face over all the words, which seems to happen quite a lot. First of all, let's look at some of the parts of speech. Some of these so called aligning language that they talk about in the book are nouns like truth, fact, reality. The author using those nouns is saying that a statement is truthful and accurate. However, if the author uses nouns like suggestion, claim, assumption, then he or she is generally saying that the statement referred to is something they question. He or she is distancing himself from the statement. You'll see the same kind of thing in adjectives. Something is clear, evident, likely. The author thinks it's true, or possible, seems pretty impossible, worrying, unlikely, or some reporting verbs. If they say the author argues or proves or points out, they think it's true. But if they say he claims or assumes or pretends, well, that's distancing language. That's like saying, no, I don't believe it. Or some of the modal verbs, if you say he will or he can, okay, pretty straightforward. But if you say may or is supposed to, well, that's a whole other ball game. That's distancing. Now, of course, there are lots of different kinds of speech here, lots of kinds of parts of speech. So let's look at connectors. Connecting words connect sentences. They form this kind of glue that holds a text together. There are many different types of these, but the most common are transitions, adverbs, and prepositions. Transitions are frequently put at the beginning of sentences. In fact, comma, yakety yakety yak, or instead, comma, yakety yakety yak, or in reality, comma. It's a kind of word that you put before the sentence. It connects to the previous sentence because they're reacting to the previous sentence, but the comma shows that it's actually separate from the sentence. It's the kind of word that holds a text together, not just clauses. Adverbs are very frequently used. Things like actually, unfortunately, regrettably. If you say, regrettably, he stole $1 million, well, heck, he stole $1 million, and you say, that's a sad thing? Well, yeah, it's more than sad. He's in jail. But adverbs can flavor the sentence that you're making. A lot of prepositions I use too. Things like despite or in spite of. You know that prepositions are followed by nouns, so you have to say despite the situation, in spite of the situation, in contrast to the situation, or unlike the situation. Those are some connectors. But it's worse. To make life worse, there are also subordinating conjunctions in play here, such as the words although or while. These words introduce subordinate clauses. Do you remember your grammar classes? Well, let's look at a few examples. Here are a few examples, things like these sentences. These services were supposed to support public transportation. Question: do they support public transportation or do they not? No, they don't, because the author disagrees. The author said the services were supposed to support public transportation, however, and so on and so on and so forth. Or the reality is that, according to the author, that is, doesn't mean that this is the true thing in life. It means what the author believes. Or although one study shows that something, well, other studies show that something else. Or he says, many drivers are clearly inexperienced. Clearly. Boy, that's a fighting word. That means he says that it's obvious to anybody with any brains that these drivers are inexperienced. No, I actually disagree with that. Well, there's an exercise in your book, so take a second, open your book to page 50, And let's look at exercise F. Okay, on that page, sentence 1 says, ride-sharing apps were expected to reduce traffic because each car can carry several passengers. Were expected to. Aha, right? The author thinks, nah, they didn't. So he says, instead, okay, they didn't. They actually increased traffic problems due to the time cars are driving between rides. Now, is this true or not? I don't know, but I know what the author believes. Or, these services were supposed to support public transportation by providing an alternative to owning a car. The next sentence would be, but they didn't, right? Sentence 3, the reality is that ride-sharing services are attracting customers away from buses and subways. Well, take a look at this picture. Do you want to be in that bus? Well, no, but I don't want to be in the car either. The reality is that I'm not saying this is true. What I'm saying is that's what the author believes. Or here's the claim word. A spokesperson for one app claimed that cities should cooperate with ride-sharing services because they increase access to transportation. Well, maybe they do increase access to transportation, but this author doesn't believe it. Right? Here's, although one study shows that traffic congestion may have dropped slightly in San Francisco because of ride-sharing apps, cities like Chicago, which adds a tax to shared rides, are much more likely to improve their roads. All right. So, what's wrong with that? Well, nothing really. But that is when he says one study shows that traffic congestion may have dropped slightly, but it says that doesn't really help because other places like Chicago, in fact, improve their roads instead, which actually doesn't sound so bad either. So, anyway, you have to learn to be critical. Here's another one. Supporters of ride-sharing apps were mistaken, all right, in their assumption that the new technology would benefit the environment. Should we say would benefit the environment? Were mistaken in their assumption. Okay, well, we know this author's opinion. It's pretty obvious. Here's, taxi drivers also point out that many drivers for these ride-sharing services are clearly inexperienced. Wait, how clearly inexperienced are they? I'd like to find that out a little bit. But that's what they say, so it's definitely evaluative language. So, conclusions. All right, the conclusion from this exercise seems to be language communicates a lot more than facts. It deeply communicates how we feel about something as well. So whenever you hear someone say, well, he was supposed to, or the truth is that, you know they're telling you what they believe. It's up to you to decide whether you agree or not.